All right, hi, I'm Cody Davis. I write primarily about history, politics, and theology at my Substack, codydavis.substack.com. And I'm here today with a representative of the Constitution Party, Thom Holmes. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about what role you have in the party and why you're a part of it, just briefly.
Well, Cody, thank you for having me on. Yes, my name is Thom Holmes. I am on the National Executive Committee with the Constitution Party. The role that I'm in is the Southern States Region Chairman. So the National Party has the U.S. divided up into four different regions, and so the Southern states are the ones that I represent. I've been with the party for over 25 years, and the efforts of all the state chairmen and all within the southern region are very much appreciated, and so I'm glad to be with you today.
All right. So what is the Constitution Party about in broad terms? How did it start? What is its primary focus?
Well, the Constitution Party is about returning our federal government to its limited powers that are enumerated in the Constitution. And so we have it's not very often these days that something is called what it really does. You know, people that pass legislation in Congress or whatever, they give bills a particular name, and when you really study it, it's sometimes the opposite. So in our case, the Constitution Party is all about restoring our government to the form of constitutional limited federal government that our founders set up. There are just about five issues that I'll mention. States' rights is a huge one. The idea of our founders was that the local control is most important, and they intentionally wanted the federal government to only have limited number of powers, and that's part of why the Constitution is so short. Um, right to life is a very important part. You know, one of the primary purposes of government is to protect innocent life. So that's a very important aspect for us. Defending our country is what is a very important aspect of what the federal government is supposed to do. And with the way the border situation is right now, the federal government's not doing a good job of defending our country. We're letting too many people in that we don't know anything about, and they're just being turned loose. Um, in order to make sure that we still have the type of government that we want, a very important aspect of our Constitution is the right to bear arms. And it's not just for hunting, it's for protecting ourselves, our family, and making sure that our government remains where it's supposed to be and limited. And then the other main point, this will be the last one I'll make at this point, is just eliminating so much of the federal spending that's unconstitutional. There are many government agencies, many government programs that are not spelled out in the Constitution. The federal government has no authority to perform those types of activities. And so if we would limit the federal government to those few things, we would be much better off.
All
As
right.
far as how the party was founded and when it was, it started in 1992, and it was really the coalition of a number of individual state parties that had been in existence for quite a long time. There have been a lot of different times where um, groups have started parties. As an example, the Republican Party was a third party back in the mid 1800s, and so the idea that we can only have two parties is just a foreign idea. In fact, our first president and several of the founding fathers warned about party politics and that we don't want to have allegiance to anything other than the Constitution, and that's where we've gotten off track in a lot of ways, I believe.
All right. So on the website, it states that the primary focus is to reestablish the American Constitutional Republic according to the actual intent of the framers of the Constitution, just like you said there. And it goes without saying that there's significant disagreement within the country over what specifically this means, and particularly when looking to the war between the states. Many people have different perspectives on what exactly that was about, and particularly in the South, there's been controversy over that. Today, it seems like largely the northern side has prevailed, but particularly when you take a step back and you look at history, there's often been a lot of tension between the northern understanding of the war and the southern understanding of the war. And so there are many Americans, including myself, who believe that Lincoln was a tyrant who perverted the Constitution and that the country has never been the same since. Is the Southern perspective on America and the Constitution accepted within the Constitution Party?
Yes, it is. The Western states were not even part of the country at the time. And so there's a lot of issues that are important to the folks in the West that are controversial as well. But
Sure.
within the Constitution Party, and really in any kind of election and political effort, you need to look for ways to bring people into your group and try to limit the voices and the disagreements that try to separate you. When we when we all come together, whether it's 10 people or 100 people, we're going to have a variety of different views, but we have to find those areas that we have in common and see if there's enough of those for us to move forward with those and recognize that not everyone's going to agree. I've been married for decades, and my wife and I don't agree on everything all the time. That's no surprise. And so um, there is plenty of room within political organizations and any kind of organization for differing views about things. Now, there are certain things that you all need to agree upon, but as far as the southern states versus northern states and the whole type issue with the Civil War, it'll be debated for years, and we're not going to solve that today. I mean, the war was fought and the North won, and so typically whoever wins a conflict writes the history. So most of the history that we read about is from the northern perspective, but there are plenty of other ideas and issues out there that people can explain, and it was more than just about slavery. It was about the federal government taking on more roles and responsibilities and not being limited like they were supposed to be. So yes, Lincoln did expand some of the reach of the federal government, and that's what we see happening every day with every president, really.
Sure. Uh, so, what are some specifics you could give that distinguish the Constitution Party from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party?
Okay, well, I guess I'll start with the Democrat Party because there's not a whole lot of uh, agreement between the Constitution Party and the Democrat Party.
Hmm.
They like to consider that the government should take care of everything and everyone, from cradle to grave, and the Democrat Party is all about government being involved in every aspect of your life. That's definitely not where the Constitution Party is. We believe more in states' rights, individual rights, and as far as comparing to the Republican Party, if you read our platform and you read the platform of the Republican Party, you're going to find quite a few similarities. There are some differences, but just because the Republican Party platform is written in a particular way doesn't mean that's the way their party leaders and their candidates uh, will rule and what their views are. So, a major difference, even though our parties may have similarities in platform, the Republican Party leadership is not held to those standards and principles. Neither are their candidates. And within the Constitution Party, we do require that leadership in the party adheres to the principles and the platform, and same with candidates, or they will not get our support. We will not encourage people to vote for those folks. But with the Republican Party, they're more about spending more money and having more control. It's the same thing that the Democrat Party does as well. So um, there are other parties that are out there. As an example, the Libertarian Party is one that a lot of people talk about. And some of the differences between the Constitution Party and the Libertarian Party are we're opposed to open borders, whereas the Libertarian Party is for the open borders. Um, Libertarian Party is pro-abortion. We are not. And then the Libertarian Party promotes that drugs should not be illegal. That it's pretty much just anything that you want to do as an individual, you can do. And so those are some of the major differences that we have with the Libertarian Party.
Got it. So, how viable is a third party, and what kind of successes has the Constitution Party achieved in its history?
Well, I mentioned earlier that the Republican Party was at one time a third party, and there was actually a three-way race. That the two primary parties at that time were the Whigs and the Democrats, and so it was really a three-way race. And Lincoln won the presidency with a total of only 38% of the popular vote. He was not even on the ballot in 9 of the states, one of those being Texas, which is a very large state. But still, Lincoln was able to win. So if you'll hear people say, "Oh, third parties never win," yeah, Lincoln won the presidency as a third party candidate. But of course, now I've already said that I didn't really care for some of the things that Lincoln did, and you did as well. But just here we're talking about third party candidates. So what it's going to take is people being fed up enough with what the two parties are doing to us to want to have an alternative. And the Constitution Party has had candidates elected at the local and state levels, but that you have to start small, and you've got to gain momentum. We do have some state parties that have been doing a very good job of organizing their states and making progress. But it's a difficult situation. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, a third party can't win. You're wasting your vote." Really, you waste your vote when you vote for something that you don't agree with. So, and the other point of it is that probably about half of the people who could vote in elections don't even bother to vote. And I'm not just talking about the registered voters. There are a lot of people that don't even bother to register. But if you go through and you count up the population and the people who could register and the people who could vote, there's actually more people who don't even vote than do vote. So if people will just vote their conscience, vote what they believe in, and vote for that, third parties could win. Now, Jesse Ventura, back in 1998, won as a member of the the Reform Party. He won the race for governor of Minnesota, and so there you have an example where a third party won the governor's race. Um, in the Constitution Party in 2006, I believe it was, we had one of our members in Montana win a state House seat. So that's not a whole lot of victories, but it just shows you that it can be done, and it just takes more people becoming aware of it.
Sure. Yeah, I looked at the Florida third party registration numbers over the past 10 years or so recently, and it's had exponential growth. So I think people really are getting fed up with the Republican and Democratic parties. And in connection with that, is the party prepared for the kind of growth that would be necessary to seriously challenge the current political milieu?
I would have to honestly say, no, I don't think we are today, but I also don't think that we're going to take control this year either. We are
Sure.
continuing to build. I mean, it's kind of like when you get married, you're never really ready for that. You have to go experience it and figure out what it's going to take and be committed to making it happen. Same with having kids. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm never really ready for having kids." So um, the Constitution Party would have a lot of work to do, but if we can attract and get enough voters and get people that are sharp people that are willing to work and roll their sleeves up, we can make it happen. I mean, think about the very first time when our country was founded. You know, those guys had to fight off the British government, and they had a really big task ahead of them, but they made it happen. And so we could do the same. We've got people here that can make it happen.
A huge demographic that's going to be clearly necessary uh, for the future of the Constitution Party is young people. And so, how does the party reach out to young people in particular? Is there any particular outreach towards young people?
Over the years, we've had various young folks, either in the college age or recently out of college, that have heard about us and wanted to become involved. And we would encourage them. They would start, young young Americans for the Constitution Party or whatever the organization might be, and we've always encouraged that. We want them to be the leaders of that, and build it as they see it will be most effective. But then they get busy with getting married or having kids and their careers, and like everyone else, you know, wind up getting sidelined and that sort of thing. So we welcome with open arms young people, but it's just going to take someone that wants to really make it happen uh, to take the reins and run with it. There's no barriers, there's no restrictions there. We welcome it, but for someone like me who's in his 60s to try to plan out what a group of young people might want to do, that really wouldn't make much sense, I don't think.
Sure. So, what kind of diversity of opinion is there within the party? What if someone agrees generally with the party but disagrees with a few items on the party platform?
There's I don't know that I've spoken with any particular person within the party that agrees with 100% of everything that's written. Every 4 years we have a convention and we modify the platform, and there are debates and discussions and votes taken, and the platform is written by the majority of the people who show up. And so um, the primary principles, some of those that maybe the five that I uh, spelled out there at the very beginning, are important, and we need to agree. But there are a whole variety of issues and problems that exist that need a lot of good people with sharp minds to figure out. And so having a different opinion doesn't mean that you're not welcome. Now, we do need to share the primary, the most important aspects of it. And then, as I described earlier, one of the differences between the Constitution Party and the Republican Party is that in order to be in leadership or to be a candidate, we want you to adhere to, just about every aspect of the platform and understand it. And it's an education process. There are probably 25 or 30 different topics that are listed in our platform, and in some ways I think it's a bit too long. It covers a lot of different things, but still it's very educational. I think it's helpful. And over the years that I have been a member of the party, which I mentioned has been over 25 years, I've learned things. And when I first read the platform, I thought, I wonder why they say that. And I went, well, I'll just keep learning and understand it. So I have a better understanding now. But there will never be 100% agreement amongst all of us, and we want to find ways to work together and find things that we agree upon and work towards that.
All right, so if someone read through the party platform and they said, I agree with this, I agree with these big ideas, but I think participation in the UN is all right as long as we don't compromise the Constitution. Would that person be eligible to be a candidate?
I think that would be up to the state party to have the discussion with them. I, like I mentioned a while ago, I think a lot of times it's just trying to fully understand what all it means. I mean, with our media that we have these days, it's hard to know. I mean, like we've got conflicts in Ukraine and other places in the world, and I don't know that we get accurate information. So if someone has fully studied how the UN was formed, what they do, where they spend their money, and all that sort of thing, um, I just think having a conversation about that instead of if I were to say that to you that I think the UN's fine and I disagree with the platform, then it's up to you and others in the party to help me understand why the platform is written that way. So I think instead of us just shutting each other out and turning off the conversation and walking away from each other, let's understand why we have those differences of opinion and let's fully explore it. I mean, there are so many important issues that can be talked about, and like I said, I've learned a lot in the time that I've been here, and so that's just the approach that I would have. I wouldn't want to just hear someone's beliefs and their views and then just dismiss them and say, "Oh, that guy's an idiot. I'm not going to waste any time on him." I think we need to work with each other to share the knowledge that we have.
All right, so the party takes a strong stance on abortion. Could you explain the party's position on that issue in particular?
Yes, the party's position is that the preborn child is a life that begins at fertilization, and it's a human being created in God's image. And the first duty of law is to protect innocent life. And so we don't want to see the shedding of innocent blood. And so safeguard all lives. And it also goes with the elderly. There are a lot of elderly folks that are being neglected and basically ignored and allowed to die. And so being pro-life isn't just about the abortion issue. It's all life. And personally, when I think about over the 50 years that Roe versus Wade kind of threw the life of a child into a political realm and became a political discussion, during that 50 years of time, there have been a lot of advances in medical technology. And of course, one of those examples is being able to test for DNA and be able to tell a lot about that person. Well, nowadays, they can test, and a baby has a separate DNA from its mother. The baby has a heartbeat. So a lot of people who are very pro-abortion say, "Oh, that's just a tissue it's a massive tissue in the mother's body, and it's her body, so she can do with it as she wants to." Well, if it has a heartbeat, it has its own blood system, it has separate DNA. That's a child. That's not a part of the mother any longer. So that's something that just a lot of people don't sit down and think through, I don't believe. So the party is pro-life, and we make no apology for that. That's kind of the end of the matter.
All right, so here's one of the toughest questions I've got. On the website, under the section that answers the question of why a third party, issues such as a woman's ability to vote and abolition of slavery are listed as issues championed by third parties. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams are both clear and explicit in their writings that women are not to vote and that it would hurt society. John Adams even called feminism the despotism of the petticoat and stated that he hoped all good American politicians would fight against it, and both Jefferson and Adams allowed slavery at the constitutional level, Mr. Jefferson having owned slaves himself. The Declaration of Independence also lists as one of the Americans' complaints against the king that he attempted to stir up slave rebellions within American society. How does the Constitution Party reconcile these things with their purpose of reestablishing the Republic according to the actual intent of the framers of the Constitution?
When you look at the overall intent and focus of the Constitution, it was to limit the federal government to the few specific issues that are defined there and that they were granted authority. States' rights was a huge one. And though you are correct that many of our founders had slaves, and women's right to vote was an issue that wasn't resolved until the early 1900s. So those were things that were considered normal at the time, slavery and women not voting. We have advanced past that. Those are not some of the issues that the Constitution Party wants to reverse. We don't see any advantage. We don't promote the idea of going back to those. The Constitution has been amended through the years. Some of those are ones that I would agree with. Others that I think, well, I don't really understand why we'd want to do it that way, but that's where it is. So the overall focus, though, is let's get the spending under control. Let's limit the federal government's ability to control so much of our life, and we'll continue to improve on the way of life for all of our citizens. And going back to women not having the right to vote and slavery are not things that we are in support of, and our platform does not state that in any way.
Sure. So if Thomas Jefferson came out of a time machine and he was here and he had his position on women not being able to vote and his position on, rather than abolition, more of a gradual emancipation of slaves, even though he would agree with probably many of the things on the Constitution Party platform, if he had those views as well, would he be welcome in the Constitution Party today?
I think we would have to have a discussion with him and, understand more of that and explain to him where we are. I mean, that would be pretty remarkable to be able to, come back from several hundred years ago, come into this world, and there'd be a lot of other things that are changed as well. But if he were just firm on that and not willing to discuss, then I don't see him being a viable candidate or a leader in the Constitution Party, because those are positions that I don't think could be defended by him or by our party. So, there are many different issues that we deal with today and that they dealt with at the time. That it's just different times.
All right. Could you describe how the party understands the relationship between the federal government and the states?
Uh, yes, the states are closer to the people, more responsive to the people, and that's the states' rights are a huge aspect of it. The states existed and they came together and formed the federal government. So the states have the upper hand, are supposed to have the upper hand. The federal government is to serve the various states in those items that are defined. And in some ways, you can read the Constitution, and three of the main things that if you boil it down to three main things that the Constitution asks the federal government to do, it's defend the shores, deliver the mail, and leave us alone. I mean, that's pretty simplistic, and there's a bit more to that, but still, if we could get to that point, if we could defend our borders, and of course now they aren't that great at delivering the mail, but back in the day, that was an important aspect of things. But still, um, the states should be have the upper hand, and originally the state legislatures were the ones who elected the U.S. senators, with the House and the Senate set up in Congress. The representatives were elected every 2 years, and that was a vote by the people in the states. But the U.S. senators were to be responsive to and answer to the state government. And that's why they were elected by the state legislatures. That was changed in the early 1900s. And so now the U.S. Senate races are very much controlled by those who can raise the most money, and it's a popular vote. So even though in our country we hear a lot about maybe even eliminating the electoral college and just let the majority of the people select the president, there are dangers to that. And some of the things that we have seen happen in our country the last 100 years, since the senators were no longer having to answer to the state government, that's caused a lot of problems for us. So anyway, every time you come up with an issue, go back and really look at what it was originally, and have we improved things, or have we gotten worse?
All right. John Adams stated that a constitution of government, once changed from freedom, can never be restored. Liberty, once lost, is lost forever. On the party's platform, a constitutional convention is opposed, despite the party's belief that the constitutional republic has been lost. How does the party reconcile their stance with John Adams' stance?
It is a pretty sobering thought that if we've totally lost our Constitution and our liberty, then it's gone. I still believe there's a very small thread of it still available. We're getting closer and closer every day to totally losing our liberty and our Constitution, but it's going to take many of us fighting very hard to restore it. As far as the Constitutional Convention goes, the reason the party is opposed to that is it would be very difficult today in the political environment that we have to truly find statesmen who are of the caliber of people who gave us the original Constitution. And most of the problems that we have today can be solved by simply going back to the original Constitution. There's talk about for years there's been talk about a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. You don't need that. It's already there. That's a requirement. We're just violating the existing laws by not having a balanced budget. So adhering to the Constitution is what we need to do. We don't need to revise it. We just need to recognize the value of it and return to it. So that's I just pray that we do have time to restore it, and that's part of the reason I've been involved in this party for as long as I have, because there are good people out there. Everyone is just very busy with their lives, and it takes people devoting a lot of attention to this effort to make it happen.
So when the party says that the republic has been lost and that you guys want to restore it, you're saying that on the whole we've lost most of our liberty, but there is still a strand left that we can build on. We don't need to uproot the entire foundation. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yes, it is. You hear a lot. Most people want to call our form of government a democracy, which we use the democratic method to elect our representatives, but a republic is a country that's ruled by law, and that's the difference. So um, every day there are more and more laws that are ignored, more and more aspects of our um, country are going in the wrong direction, and there will be a day when it is totally gone. And like there are some people who think that it is that we have lost it, and I just pray that there's enough left and there's enough people left that want to restore it, that we can return to prosperity and a rule of law that caused us to be the most free nation in the world, and one of the best that's ever been in existence. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be still doing this.
All right. Well, to wrap up, how can people register for the party?
All right. Well, you register to vote at your individual state level. You don't join a national party. You can go on our national website, which is constitutionparty.com. You can go on there and you can indicate your interest in being a supporter and send financial contribution. You can receive newsletters and information. But to register, um, every state has its own election laws, its own requirements for registration. And in some states, you're not allowed to register as a member of the Constitution Party. You can register as an independent, and not be part of the Democrats or the Republicans. But you just have to understand your own individual state laws. But as a voter, you register at the state level, and some states allow you to register as a member of the Constitution Party. Some states do not. In Florida, you are allowed to, where you live, you're allowed to register as a member of the Constitution Party. Just every state is different, so you just have to explore that for yourself.
All right. Well, you already answered this. How should people where should they go to read more about the party and donate? I know you said the national party, but are there state websites for every state, or is it just a few states?
Yes, on the National Party website, there will be a link that says About Us, and then that says state parties, and there's a U.S. map, and you can click on that link. And uh, unfortunately, we are not organized in every state, so not every state has a state website, but there are a number that are, and you can find those there on the National ConstitutionParty.com website. So just ConstitutionParty.com. Go in there and find the U.S. map, and then click on your state, and the names of the state leaders will be there, or the region leaders. Like I mentioned, we have 4 different regions, and you can contact those folks and understand and find out what the situation is in your particular state. But um, the platform is very good, as I mentioned before. Just about most topics you want to know about are listed in there, and tells you what the party stands for and where we are. So I encourage you to go to constitutionparty.com. And uh, Cody, we really appreciate you taking the time and the interest in having this interview, and I look forward to it. Hopefully it'll do some good for us.
All right, thank you. And lastly, if anybody wants to get involved, besides donating, besides going to the website, what can they do if they'd like to get involved further than that?
When you contact your state chairman or the leaders in your area, they'll have a variety of activities possibly, or candidates. The purpose for a president, for a political party, is to elect candidates to office. There are a lot of different types of organizations out there that have particular issues that are important to them, gun rights, or whatever it might be, immigration. But the differences between us and them is that we have a view on all those different topics, but our focus needs to be electing candidates. So That's not something that most people are willing to do, is step forward and be a candidate, but that's what we need. We need people who are willing to serve at their local level. County sheriff is probably one of the most important roles in the whole country. And it'd be wonderful to have a bunch of Constitution Party members as a county sheriff, or in any form of local government. That's where it really matters. So much of our thought process and energy is on the national level, the presidential race or U.S. Senate, but and most of our problems come from Washington. Don't get me wrong, but the things that we can do the most good at are at the local level, and school board elections are important. So that's where I would encourage people to get involved. If you call up your state chairman and you for the Constitution Party and tell them you're interested in running for state school board or county sheriff or some local office, they will be thrilled and excited.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I'm Cody Davis, and this is Thom Holmes. Goodbye.
Thank you, Cody.